Welcome back, children. So today we will move on to the last poem in the syllabus, the 10th one, Abu Ben Adam. In the previous classes, we had completed the rest of the 9 poems which are there in your ICSE syllabus. Abu Ben Adam, the very title of the poem makes it clear that it is the name of somebody. Now the question is, who is this somebody and why has he been taken as the subject matter of a poem? Now first of all, let me tell you, the story of Abu Ben Adam is there in a collection of stories called Oriental Stories. So the poet has taken this character from this collection called Oriental Stories. In this collection, Abu Ben Adam is referred to as Ibrahim Adam. He is not referred to as Abu Ben Adam, but in the story he is referred to as Ibrahim Adam. Now, who was he? He was a Sufi saint of the 8th century. Because he was good, because he was honest, because he was loving, because he was caring, Abu Ben Adam or Ibrahim Adam was considered to be the spiritual leader of his tribe's men. So obviously you see, Abu Ben Adam was not an ordinary figure. He was a saintly person, a loving, kind, helpful person, an honest, innocent person, and therefore he has been taken as an example in this poem to teach us something. And that is why when you look at the type of poem Abu Ben Adam is, I have written, this poem is a fable. Now you know, you have heard of Aesop's fables, you have heard of stories of Panchatantra. These are all fables. A fable is a story which teaches us a moral lesson. Here, the poem is in the form of a fable, which is telling us the story of Abu and teaching us several moral lessons. Therefore, it's a fable. Now I come to the poem line by line. Abu Ben Adam, may his tribe increase, awoke one night from a deep dream of peace. Now look at the first line. There is something written within brackets or parentheses. May his tribe increase. May his tribe increase. I told you that Abu was an honest man, a kind man, a helpful man, a loving person, a caring person. That is why the poet is saying that may many more good people like Abu be in this world. So, the moment the poet mentions the name of Abu Ben Adam, the poet is parallelly saying that Abu was such a good person that may the number of such good people increase in this world so that the world becomes a better place to live in. Now see, awoke one night from a deep dream of peace. Now, deep dream of peace, first of all you will see repetition of the D sound. Therefore, the figure of speech is alliteration. Now, what is a deep dream of peace? Abu was sleeping peacefully in his room, and in his sleep, he saw a sweet dream. So it was a peaceful sleep where he had a sweet dream. Because the sleep was peaceful, the dream was also very sweet. And saw within the moonlight in his room, making it rich and like a lily in bloom, an angel writing in a book of gold. Now, what did Abu see in his dream? In his dream, Abu saw that his room was filled with moonlight. But the room appeared to be more bright than the moonlight. The more brightness of the moonlight in the room was because of the presence of an angel. And Abu saw that an angel was present in his room, and that angel was writing something in a book of gold. That is the broader explanation. Now I come to the specifics. Now, what is written? Abu saw that his room was brightened by moonlight, making it rich. Making it rich means the moonlight appeared to be brighter than usual. Why? It was because of the bright presence of that angel. And like a lily in bloom. Now see, like a lily in bloom. Now you see the word like. So a comparison has been made. So this line is a simile. Now what is the simile? You know, the traditional belief is that angels wear white. So, since the moonlight had appeared brighter because of the presence of the angel wearing white robe, therefore the room appeared to be as white as a white lily blooming. Since the whiteness of the brightness of the moonlight with the angel present wearing white robes is compared to a white lily blooming, this comparison makes this line a simile. And what was this angel doing in the room? He was writing something, we don't know what as yet, in a book of gold. Now, why book of gold? Gold is not just a precious metal. It is also a symbol of eternity. And therefore, this book can be considered as a book of eternity where the angel was writing something. What was this eternity? Obviously, we will come to know that the angel was writing the names of those people in this book who loved God. So their names would be eternally etched and written down in that permanent book. That is the point. Exceeding peace had made Ben Adam bold. Now I have already told you, Abu was an honest man, an innocent man, a kind man, a helpful man, a caring man, a loving man. Obviously, because he was such a good man, he had no fear. And he had extreme peace in his heart and mind because he had never done anything bold. And you know, people who are honest, people who have never done anything wrong, they are not scared or frightened of anything. And Abu wasn't scared or frightened of the presence of the angel in his room. Rather, he was courageous and brave to ask the angel a question. And that courage came from his honesty, helpfulness, his loving and caring nature. And to the presence in the room he said, "What writest thou?" The presence obviously is the angel. So Abu asked the angel, "What are you writing in that book of gold?" The vision raised its head. Now again, the vision obviously is the angel. Why is the angel referred to as vision? The reason is simple. The angel was visible to Abu, but obviously he could not touch the angel. That is why the angel is referred to as the vision. So, the vision raised its head and with a look made of all sweet accord answered. Now listen, when Abu asked the question, the angel did not become angry or irritated. Rather, he answered the question of Abu in a sweet, polite, friendly voice. There was no anger, there was no irritation in the voice of the angel. He was not angry with Abu asking the question. And what did the angel answer? The names of those who love the Lord. The angel said, "I am writing down the names of those people who love God." Lord obviously here is God. "And is mine one?" said Abu. "Nay, not so," replied the angel. Abu asked the angel a very simple question. "Is my name there in that book?" The angel said, "No, your name is not there in this book of gold." Abu spoke more low, but cheerily still. Now you must understand, when the angel answered that, "No, your name is not there in this book of gold," it was obvious and it was natural for Abu to be sad, sorrowful, disheartened, broken-hearted, because he deserved to be in that list because he was a good man. But you must understand, he had so much of trust and confidence in himself that he did not become disheartened. He did not become sad. He did not feel sorrowful. Rather, he spoke in a happy, cheerful, merry voice. There was no bitterness in his tone. There was no sadness in his tone. There was no disappointment in his tone. And look at the confidence with which he said something to the angel. What did he say? "I pray you then, write me as one that loves his fellow men." He said, "Mr. Angel, I request you one thing. Please write down my name as one who loves his fellow human beings." He never said, "Write my name as one who loves God." No. He said, "Write down my name as one, as somebody who loves fellow human beings." The angel wrote and vanished. Now the point is, what did the angel write here? Did he write down the name of Abu in that book of gold? No. The angel noted down what Abu said. The angel noted that Abu ben Adam was a person who loved his fellow human beings. He took a note of this. His name had not yet entered that book. And then the angel vanished or disappeared. The next night, it came again with a great wakening light. The next night, when Abu was sleeping, again the angel came back in his dream. Again, the brightness of the presence of the angel, this awakening light, the brightness of the presence of the angel woke up Abu in his dream and showed the names whom love of God had blessed. Please note, the angel showed Abu the names of those people who had been blessed by God. Remember, these are not the names of people who loved God, but these are the names of the people who had been blessed by the love of God. And lo, Ben Adam's name led all the rest. And look what was in that list. Abu Ben Adam's name was on the top of the list, a person who had been blessed by the love of God. It's a very short poem of only 18 lines. And one thing I would like to tell you about the technical aspect of this poem, this poem has been written in couplets. Couplets meaning line 1 and 2 rhyme, line 3 and 4 rhyme, line 5 and 6 rhyme. If you look at the poem, you will see first line ends with increase, second line ends with peace. Increase, peace, they rhyme. When two lines rhyme, it is called a couplet. So 18 lines are there in this poem. There are 9 couplets. 9 couplets meaning 2. So 9 into 2, 18. So this poem is written in couplets. Now I come to the theme of the poem. The theme of the poem is very simple and straightforward. And as I had told you, a fable tells a story and teaches us a moral lesson. The theme is also the moral lesson taught through this poem. What is the moral lesson? First one is very simple. Serving humanity is serving God. What did Abu do? Abu used to love his fellow human beings. Loving your fellow human beings is equivalent to loving God. Christian concept tells us, love thy neighbors. What is Abu doing? He is loving humanity. And that is serving and loving God. That is moral lesson number 1. And lesson number 2 is, no need to go to places of worship, pilgrimage, or prayers. Meaning, if you spend hours at a mandir, at a mosque, at a church, at a synagogue, whatever is the place of worship, it is simply a wastage of time. Rather than waste your time in places of worship, rather than go to holy places on pilgrimages, rather than spend hours sitting in front of God's idol and praying, instead of wasting time in praying, worshipping, going to a religious place, or going on holy pilgrimages, if you help and serve other human beings, that is the best way to show your love for God. Remember, mankind is God's favorite creation. And remember, when you serve and love mankind, you are showing and expressing your love for God. These are the 2 moral messages conveyed through this poem, which is also the theme of this poem. And the last thing I want to make very clear, lists. Now the question may come, how many lists are there in this poem? Actually, there are 2 lists. Initially, what was the book of gold about? The angel was writing the names of those who loved God in that book of gold. So, list one was the names of those who love God. But Abu's name was not included in this list. Abu's name was included in the second list. What was the second list? The second list contained the names of those whom God's love had blessed, and Abu was one of them. So, Abu's name was not included there where he loved God. Rather, his name was in the second list because he had been blessed by the love of God. And that is what the central idea of this poem is. Please don't waste your time in prayers. Don't spend hours in religious places. Don't go to holy places on pilgrimages, wasting time and money. By sitting at home, by helping and serving mankind, by helping and serving human beings, by helping and serving your neighbors, you can show and express your love for God. This is exactly what Abu Ben Adam or Ibrahim Adam, the Sufi saint, had done in the 8th century. And that is why his name is there in that collection called Oriental Stories. And that is why the poet Leigh Hunt had chosen Abu Ben Adam as the hero of his poem. Thank you.
Hello my dear students of class 10. Today I'm going to teach you coordinate geometry. So from this particular, it's a very interesting topic because this chapter gets carried over to class 11 and class 12. So coordinate geometry, before I start coordinate geometry, let me tell you what are the things which we are going to learn today. So I have already written coordinate geometry. The first thing I'm going to teach you is midpoint formula. Then I'm going to teach you section formula, and then I'm going to teach you centroid of a triangle. So these are the three formulas which you need to know. Okay, before I begin, see, it's a continuation of what you learned in class 9. Now just please pay attention, just look at the screen. Now you know the vertical line is your y-axis and the horizontal line is your x-axis. So you got positive, you got negative, positive x, you got negative x extended to infinity, positive y and negative y. This was there in class 9 when we learned graph. Now any point will have two coordinates, x coordinate and the y coordinate. This is called abscissa and this is called ordinate. So every point has two coordinates. Like suppose I need a point 2, 3. If you have to plot this, then you take 2 horizontal distance and 3 vertical distance. So the point A is 2, 3. Similarly, if I need a point -1 and 2, so -1 and 2. So this is your point B. So every point can be written in terms of two coordinate. Now using this concept, I'm going to teach you how to find the coordinate of a point which is in the middle of AB, and I'm going to teach you how to find the coordinate of a point which is not in the middle but is divided by some ratio between A and B. So this concept will help you understand that every point will have two coordinates. The first coordinate is x and the second coordinate is y. So the first coordinate is called abscissa and the second coordinate is called ordinate. Now first formula is midpoint. Midpoint formula says if there is a line segment AB, let us say the coordinate of A, I told you there will be two coordinates. Let the coordinate of A be x1 and y1 and let the coordinate of B be x2 and y2. Suppose there is a point which is in the middle of AB, then P is called the midpoint whose coordinate will be xy. So there's a relation between the 3 points. The relation is x equal to x1 plus x2 by 2 and y equal to y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So this formula shows a relation between 3 points. So using this formula you can either find the coordinate of A, coordinate of B or coordinate of the midpoint, that is P. So this is midpoint formula. Now the second one is called section formula. So what is section formula? Again, a line segment AB, coordinate of, I'm going to use the same notation. So x1 and y1, it could be anything 2, 3. Coordinate of B, x2, y2, and there is a point P which is not in the middle but divided by some kind of ratio. Let us say the ratio is m is to n. The coordinate of P is xy. So again, this section formula shows us the relation between 3 points such that P is not in the middle but P divides AB in a certain ratio, that is m is to n. Then the relation section formula says x equal to m times cross multiply x2, because this is the formula for x, plus n times x1 divided by m plus n. Similarly, the formula for y is going to be m times, I told you to cross multiply, m times y2 plus n times y1 divided by m plus n. If you get used to the same notations, then you'll have no problems writing down the formula. So see the difference between midpoint and section. AB is a line segment, P is a point which is in the middle of AB, then P is called the midpoint. The relation between them is x1 plus x2 divided by 2 will give you the x coordinate of the midpoint, y1 plus y2 divided by 2 will give you the midpoint of the y coordinate. Similarly, section formula, there's a point P but which is not in the middle. Let us say the ratio is 2:3. The ratio is 2:3. That means P divides AB in the ratio 2:3. Then the formula is m times x2 plus n times x1 divided by m plus n. So this is the first formula A, this is the second formula B, and the third formula is centroid. Centroid means given a triangle has 3 vertices. A is x1 y1, B is x2 y2, and C is x3 y3. Then the centroid, the midpoint of the triangle, centroid is the midpoint of the triangle where the medians meet. G, I have used the notation G, x comma y. Then the formula for the centroid is going to be x equal to x1 plus x2 plus x3 divided by 3 and y equal to y1 plus y2 plus y3 divided by 3. Is that clear? Now see, midpoint formula, there are 2 line segments, so midpoint is divided by 2. Triangle, midpoint, there are 3 vertices, so divided by 3. So these are the 3 formulas that we will be using for the first chapter on coordinate geometry. Once again, students, just look at the board. This is midpoint formula, this is section formula, and this is centroid of a triangle. CENTROID, centroid of a triangle. So these 3 formulas are needed to solve the first exercise on coordinate geometry. So if you are just watching this in YouTube, please just pause the video for a moment and please note down the formulas. So these are the 3 very important formulas that we will be using. So now let me explain the formula by solving few questions from the exercise. Okay, look at question number 1, subdivision 3. Find the coordinate of the midpoint of the line segment joining the points. I just draw, just to make you understand, I draw a line segment AB. 2 coordinates are given. The first coordinate is x coordinate a plus 3, comma 5b, and we got second is 2a minus 1 and 3b plus 4. What am I supposed to find? I am supposed to find the midpoint. So you know the notation, this is x1, y1, this is x2, y2. Let the midpoint be P whose coordinate is x, y. So using midpoint formula, what is the midpoint formula? x equal to x1 plus x2 divided by 2 and y equal to y1 plus y2 divided by 2. What is x1? As you can clearly see, what is x1? A plus 3. So a plus 3 plus what is x2? It is 2a minus 1 divided by 2. So 2a plus a, like term, you can add, plus 3 minus 1 is plus 2 divided by 2. So this is the x coordinate, and what is the y coordinate? Y1, it is 5b, and what is y2? 3b plus 4 divided by 2. So y is going to be 5 plus 3 is 8b plus 4 divided by 2. I can cancel this if I take 2 common, 4b plus 2 divided by 2. So 2 and 2 gets cancelled. So what is the midpoint? It is 3a plus 2 divided by 2 comma 4b plus 2. So this is how you calculate the midpoint. So moving on, this is how you calculate the midpoint using the midpoint formula. Now look at question number 3. P divides the distance between A and B in the ratio 2:1. Calculate the coordinate of the point P. So there is a line segment. There is a line segment AB. What is the coordinate of the point A? It is minus 2 comma 1. And what is the coordinate of the point B? It is 1 comma 4. So I told you to write down the notation. This becomes x1 y1. This becomes x2 y2. Extreme notations. Extreme points. Got it? Extreme points x1 y1 x2 y2, and there's a point P in between AB such that P divides AB in the ratio 1:2. The ratio is 2:1. The ratio is 2:1. I have to find the coordinate of P. I've used the same notations. So this is M and this is N. So as you can see clearly from the figure that P does not divide AB exactly, or P is not the midpoint. So there is some ratio. So we are going to use section formula. Section formula. So what's the formula? How did I teach you? X equal to M times cross multiply x2 plus n times x1 divided by m plus n. Similarly, what's the value of y? Y equal to m times y2 plus n times y1 divided by m plus n. So put the value. What is m? M is 2 into what is x2? X2 is 1 plus what is n? N is 1. X1, what is x1? It's minus 2 divided by m is 2, n is 1. Similarly, let me solve this. 2 1s are 2, so you get minus 2 divided by 3, so 0 divided by 3 is 0. Similarly, what is m? 2 into y2 is 4 plus n is 1 and y1 is 1 divided by 2 plus 1. So 4 2s are 8 plus 1 divided by 3, 9 by 3 is 3. Therefore, what is the coordinate of the point P? Please make sure you write this. The coordinate of the point P is x comma y. What is the value of x? X is 0 and y is 3. So as you can see, this is how you use the formula to get the point. So before I move further, let me recap what we have learned till now. The first thing I told you is every point has two coordinates, the x coordinate and the y coordinate. X coordinate is called abscissa and the y coordinate is called ordinate. So that means every point has to be defined in two coordinates, x coordinate and the y coordinate. Next thing which I taught you is if you know 2 points, then I can find the coordinate of the midpoint. I can find the coordinate of the midpoint using midpoint formula. And if I know that there are 2 points, a line segment is and there is a point P which divides the line segment into two ratios, into two parts, then we can use section formula to find the point. And the third one is when a triangle is given. When a triangle is given, a triangle has 3 vertices. You can find out the center of the triangle using the formula for centroid. So these are the three things which we learned. So this is section formula. Now let us do few important questions. So the third one I've done it. So fourth also can be done easily. 7 and 8 you need not do because that is really that is reflection. We are going to do later on. Okay, question number 10. Question number 10. The midpoint of the line segment joining the points 3 minus, so there is a line segment, 2 points are there. The extreme points are 3m comma 6 and minus 4 comma 3n. So these two extreme points are given, so you just give them names. Let it be A and this be B. The notation is going to be same, x1 y1, this is going to be x2 y2. So the midpoint means a point which is in the middle. So the quadrant of the midpoint is also given. What is the quadrant of the midpoint? Is 1 comma 2m minus 1. So you know the notation, this is x, this is y. So what am I supposed to find? I am supposed to find the value of m and n. So how do I do this? So since P is the midpoint, using midpoint formula x equal to x1 plus x2 by 2, y equal to y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So what is x1? What is x? X is 1 equal to, what is x1? It is 3m plus, what is x2? x2 is minus 4 divided by 2. So 2 ones are 2 equal to 3m minus 4. Minus 4 comes this side, becomes plus 4. So this becomes 6. So 6 divided by 3 equal to m. So 3 2s are. So what's the value of m? M equal to 2. What is the value of y? It is 2m minus 1 equal to, what is y1? It is 6 plus, what is y2? 3n divided by 2. Let me put the value of m. We already got that. It's 2 equal to 6 plus 3n divided by 2. So 2 2s are 4. 4 minus 1 is 3 equal to 6 plus 3n divided by 2. So 3 2s are 6 equal to 6 plus 3n. So 6 comes this side, you get 0 equal to 3n. So 0 equal to n. Therefore, what is the value of m? M is 2, and what is the value of n? It is 0. So this is a typical ICC question for you all based on midpoint formula. So question number, this was question number 10. Question number 9 and 11 also can be done. You do not do question number 7 and question number 8 because this question is based on reflection. That we are going to do a bit later. Next, look at question number 17. Yes, question number 17. It is very important. Question number 17 is very important. Question number 17 says, the line segment AB is intersected by x-axis at a point K. Write down the quadrant of the point K, hence find the ratio in which K divides AB. This is a very, very important, mark my words, it is one of the most important questions on section formula. So the point A, what is the point A? It is 2 comma 3, and what is the point B? The point B is 6 comma minus 5. It is intersected by x-axis at the point K. That means AB cuts the x-axis at the point K. Just to make you all understand, this is your y and this is your x-axis. So there is a line segment AB which cuts the x-axis at the point K. So one thing you need to remember is any point on x-axis the y coordinate is 0, and any point on y-axis the x coordinate is 0. So since K is a point on x-axis, the y coordinate is going to be 0, so it's going to be x comma 0, not x comma y, it's going to be x comma 0. So this is A and this is B. A is 2 comma 3, B is 6 comma minus 5. So again, AB are two extreme points, so I take it as x1 y1 and x2 y2, and there is a point K whose coordinate is x comma 0, the notation is xy. Let K divide AB in the ratio m is to n. m is to n. So you know the formula. What is the formula? Using section formula, x equal to m times x2 plus n times x1 divided by m plus n, and y equal to m times y2 plus n times y1 divided by m plus n. Now in order to find the ratio first, now this is very important for you all. Now look at the value. You are going to use that formula which is known to you. Like, look at this. Do I know the value of x? No. X we have to find, but don't we know the value of y? What is the value of y? 0. So since the point lies on x axis and the value of y is known, I'm going to use the y coordinates formula first. Since y equal to 0. Why y equal to 0? Because the point lies on x axis. So the formula y equal to m times y2 plus n times y1 divided by m plus n. Okay, before I move on to the next step, please keep in mind there can be only two variations. One is x axis, so y equal to 0, so you are going to use y for the formula for y. If they say y axis, then x equal to 0, then you are going to use the formula for x coordinate first. So what is the value of y? It's 0. M times, what is y2 please? Y2 is minus 5 plus n times, what is y1? Y1 is 3 divided by m plus n. M plus n into 0 is 0. So you get 5m plus 3n. So 5m comes this side. So 5m equal to 3n. So m divided by n equal to 5 by 3. Therefore, what is the ratio in which k divides AB? It is 5 is to 3. So this is the first part of the question. This is how you find out the ratio. Now let me find out the coordinate. Now as you can see, the coordinate is k, x comma 0. We already know the y coordinate is 0, we just have to find the x coordinate. So once we know m and n, we can easily use the formula of x coordinate to get the value of x. So please help me out. What is m? M is 5. 5 into what is x2? x2 is 6 plus n. What is n? 3 into what is x1? It is 2 divided by m plus n. What is m? 5 plus 3. So 5 6 are 30 plus 3 2s are 6. What do you get? 5 6 7 8. So you get 36 divided by 8. You have to find out the coordinate also. So what is going to be? So cancel 2 4s are 2 1s are 2 8 2s are 16, 2 2s are 2 9s are. So the value of x is 9 by 2. So see this question properly. As I've already told you, this is one of the most important questions from this particular topic, that is section formula. Once again, let me revise. The line segment joining point A 2, 3 and B 6, 5 is intersected by x axis. Cuts the x axis at the point K. So any point which lies on x axis will have y coordinate 0, so x comma 0. Write down the coordinate of the point K. Ordinate of the point K. What does ordinate mean? The y axis. So what is the y coordinate? What is the y coordinate? It is 0. That's the first part. Hence find in which k divides AB. So what I've done, I've drawn a line segment AB. This is x1 y1, this is x2 y2. Now k x comma 0, I've written the formula of section formula, m times x2 plus n times x1 divided by m plus n. Since the y coordinate is 0, y equal to 0, I've used y, the formula for y, m y2. What is y2? Minus 5 plus n times y1 is 3. So the ratio is going to be, I made a mistake out here, I'm so sorry. The ratio is going to be 3 by 5. The ratio is going to be 3 by 5. 3 is to 5. So there will be a small change. Out here. So it's going to be m is 3. So 3 into x2. What is x2? It's 6 plus 5 into x1 is 2 divided by 3 plus 5. So what do you get? Now 6 3s are 18, 5 2s are 10 and 8. So 28 divided by 8. So 4 2s are 4 7s are. So x equal to 7 by 2. Therefore the coordinate of k is x comma 0. So what's the value of x? 7 by 2 comma 0. So I made a slight mistake out here, but no problem. So m is to n is 3 is to 5. Is that clear? So So the second variation which you can expect is, instead of x-axis, they can ask you y-axis. So please, in that case, what you need to do, if they say y-axis, then the x equal to 0. So you can just pause the video for a moment and just go through the solution. So a very important question. And one last question which I am going to discuss is, so as you can see, all these questions, once you have seen this video, you will be able to do all the questions except that 7 and 8 reflection one you need not do. The other questions you can try. Is that clear? All these questions are same. I wanted to do one question. Yes, question number 34. Question number 34, or rather, let me do a little difficult one. Find this. Okay, let me do question number 35 for you. Two vertices of a triangle are 3 comma minus 5, 3 comma minus 5 and minus 7 comma 4. That means two vertices are given. Find the third vertex given that the centroid G is 2 comma minus 1. So let this be A, let this be B, we have to find C. So C we don't know, so let us take it as A comma B. So given a triangle has three vertices A, B and C. A is 3 comma minus 5, 3 comma minus 5, B is minus 7 comma 4 and C is A comma B. So I taught you how to write down the notation: x1 y1, x2 y2, x3 y3. The centroid is 2 comma minus 1, so this is going to be xy. So using the formula for centroid, x equal to x1 plus x2 plus x3 divided by 3, y equal to y1 plus y2 plus y3 divided by 3. So x equal to, what is x1? x1 is 3 plus x2 is minus 7, x3 is a divided by 3. What is the value of x? X is 2. So 3 2s are 6 equal to 3 minus 7 plus a. So 6 equal to minus 4 plus a. So a becomes 10. So as you can see the values. Similarly, what is the value of y? The value of y is minus 1. What is the value of y1? It is minus 5 plus y2 is 4 plus y3 is b divided by 3. So minus 3 equal to minus 5 plus 4 is 1. So minus 3 plus 1 equal to b. So minus 2 equal to b. So therefore the coordinate of the third vertex is 10 comma minus 2. You can go through it one more time. What is x1? 3, x2 is minus 7, x3 is a divided by 3. So 3 2s are 6. 3 minus 7 is minus 4, minus 4 comes there, becomes plus. So 10, the value of a is 10. Similarly, y1 is minus 5, y2 is 4 plus b divided by 3 and the coordinate of y is minus 1. So 3 into minus 1 is minus 3, minus 5 plus 4 is minus 1, minus 1 comes there and becomes plus 1. So minus 3 plus 1 equal to minus 2. So you got the value of a, you got the value of b. That is how you calculate the coordinate of the third vertex. Is that okay? So as you can see, today I taught you three formulas. One is midpoint formula, the second one is section formula, and the third one is to find the centroid. So in all these three formulas you saw a relation between different points. You could find out the value of the points if 2 points were given, like you could find out the midpoint or the extreme points depending on the situation. So you just have to implement, you just have to use the formulas that you see, which I have already given it to you. So this is regarding the centroid of a triangle. So let me do one last question before I complete my lecture on coordinate geometry. I wanted to do this ISC 33 ISC question. So what is given is coordinate, the y-axis and the x-axis is given. Is that clear? Now there is a line segment which cuts the x-axis at the point A and the y-axis at the point B, and A midpoint is given. Midpoint is 4 comma minus 3. I had to find the coordinate of A and B. Once again, let me revise the previous concept which I have taught you. Any point on x-axis will have y coordinate 0. So x comma 0. Any point on y-axis will have x coordinate 0. So 0 comma y. So let me write it properly. This is A, this is B. What is the coordinate of A? X comma 0. What's the coordinate of B? 0 comma y. And what is the midpoint? It is 4 comma minus 3. So write down the notations x1, y1, x2, y2, x and y. So midpoint theorem, x1 plus x2 divided by 2. So y equal to y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So put the formula for x1. What is this? X. What is the value of x, please? 4. 4 equal to, what is x1? It is x plus what is x2? It is 0 divided by 2. So 4 2s are 8. The value of x is 8. Next, what is the value of y? Y is minus 3. What is y1? Y1 is 0. What is y2? It is y divided by 2. So minus 6. So you got x as well as y. Therefore, the coordinate of A was x comma 0 because it's on x axis. So capital A is nothing but 8 comma 0. And the coordinate of B, it is on y axis. So 0 comma y. So B is 0 comma minus 6. So I hope the solution is clear to you all. So please, what I want you all to do is, I want you all to try the most questions from this particular exercise. I want you all to try questions on midpoint, section and centroid. Tomorrow's class I will discuss some few important ICC questions based on collinearity and distance and section formula. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, I'm back with you to teach you chemistry. If you remember, we are doing the chapter called acid, bases and salt, in which I have already completed acid with you. So from today we are going to learn about base. Okay, you can see the definition of base out here. These are those compounds which on dissociation produce hydroxyl ions, means OH minus, as the negative ions, because minus means negative. Okay, so bases are those compounds we say which on dissociation produce hydroxyl ion as the only negative ions. And the example of some of the bases are out here, like sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, calcium hydroxide, etc. Now let us see how we can determine base from a compound. Okay, to do so I'll show you some reactions out here. Okay, this is your sodium hydroxide, this is called potassium hydroxide, ammonium hydroxide, calcium hydroxide, ferrous hydroxide, ferric hydroxide. Students, iron has 2 valency, keep this in mind. If the valency of iron is 2, we call ferrous hydroxide, and if the valency of iron is 3, we call ferric hydroxide, and the last one is called aluminium hydroxide. Now I am going to show you the dissociation reaction of these all compounds. Now see that, students, you have to be very careful when you show the dissociation reactions. Okay, so what you do first is you break this into Na and OH. This as Na, this as OH. Similarly here you break this as Ka and what? OH. Now here you can break this as NH4 plus OH, because there is NH4 and there is OH. Now this you can break it as CaNOH. This you can break it as FeNOH. This you can break it as FeNOH again. And this again you can break it as Al plus OH. Now count the number of OH. Here is 1 OH, so I have written 1 OH, so 1 OH, so 1. But if you see here, there are 2 OH, so put here 2. Here is 2 OH, so put here 2. Here is 3 OH, you put here 3. Here is also 3 OH, so put here 3. And do remember, this is known by the name hydroxyl ions. Okay, this is known by the name hydroxyl ion, whose charge is -1. So always remember the charge of hydroxyl ion is -1. Now do remember, students, when you break the compound, the number of positive charge and negative charge should be equal. So if you see here, the charge is -1. To counterbalance this, we need to write here +1. So +1 -1 balance. minus 1, so the charge out here has to be plus 1. Minus 1, so charge out here has to be plus 1 because number of plus and minus should be equal after you break. Now if you see here, here is 2 minus because you have to multiply with this also. 2 minus, so here we write 2 plus. 2 minus, we write here 2 plus. 3 minus, so we write here 3 plus. Here is 3 minus, 3 ones are 3 minus, so we write here 3 plus. So students, this is how you are going to learn how to break a chemical reaction. Many students, they break this one by one, but you can see out here, I break it in bulk, which makes it easy. And please do not mug this, you have to practice the way I have taught you just now. Now let us see the definition of base from here. Students, base are those compounds we say which on dissociation produces hydroxyl ion as the only negative ion. You can see out here, the negative ion is only OH. So I repeat the definition again. Base are those compounds we say which on dissociation produce hydroxyl ions as the only negative ions. And since all of this compound on dissociation is producing hydroxyl ion as the only negative ion, therefore they are termed as base. So do practice it. If you want, you can take the screenshot of this. Okay, so you can make the note of it. And I have shown you through the slide also the same reaction, students. So if you want, you can take the screenshot of this, okay? And see that you will not practice this reaction individually. You have to practice in bulk the way I did. It is very easy way to remember all these reactions. So I gave you the definition of base and how to determine base by the dissociation reaction. Now we will see classification of base. Last time we saw the classification of acid. Now today we are going to see the classification of base. So base can be classified into 4 ways. Number 1, according to acidity. Number 2, according to strength. Number 3, according to concentration. Number 4, according to solubility. In which first I would like to explain you through according to acidity. Let us see the type of base according to acidity. So before we classify the base according to acidity, you should know what does acidity means. So students, acidity actually means number of hydroxyl ions produced on dissociation of a base. The number of hydroxyl ions produced on dissociation of a base means acidity. But many students has a confusion here. They say that acid has acidity and base has basicity. If you remember, I gave you this word last time called ABA. What is the meaning of this? A has B, B has A. Means acid has basicity, which means number of hydrogen ion, and base has acidity, which means number of OH minus ion. So students, you can see here the definition of acidity. It is the number of hydroxyl ion produced on dissociation of a base. So do remember, acid has basicity and base has acidity. Now according to acidity, students, there are 3 kinds of base. One is called monoacidic base, diacidic base and triacidic base. Now don't mug its definition, you can get it from here. See, read from back, you get the definition. I have only given you the examples. I have not given you the definition because definition you can make it from its name. So how to define monoacidic base? Read from back. These are those base whose acidity is 1 because mono means 1. Diacidic base, these are those base whose acidity is 2. Di means 2. Triacidic base, these are those base whose acidity is 3. Okay, students, I'll repeat one more time. Base having acidity 1 is called monobasic acid, monoacidic base. Base having acidity 2 is called diacidic base, and base having acidity 3 is called triacidic base. Now if you see out here, NaOH, KOH and NH4OH, when these 3 compounds dissociate, they produce 1 OH, 1 OH, 1 OH. Therefore their acidity is 1 and they come under monoacidic base. Now this compound, when it breaks, it gives you 2 OH, 2 OH and 2 OH ions. Therefore it is diacidic base. Whereas these 2, when they dissociate, they produce 3 hydroxyl ion, 3 hydroxyl ion. Therefore they come under triacidic base. You can see from here also, students. You can see these 3 compound on dissociation produce how many OH minus ion? Just 1. That means their acidity is 1 and they come under monoacidic base. And if you see these two, when they dissociate, that is calcium hydroxide and iron 2 hydroxide, when they dissociate, they produce 2 OH minus ion. Therefore, they are diacidic base. Now, whereas these two, the last two, when they dissociate, they produce 3 OH minus ion. So, since they are producing 3 OH minus ion, they come under triacidic base. Means base whose acidity is 3, base whose acidity is 2, and base whose acidity is 1. And examples are there. So, if you want, you can take the screenshot of this also for reference to make notes back home. Now, we will see number 2, that is according to strength. According to strength, students, there are two kinds of base, strong base and weak base. This classification we even see in the acid part, isn't it? According to strength, acid are two types, strong acid and weak acid. So, similarly, according to strength, bases are also two types, strong base and weak base. Strong base are those base we consider which dissociates completely. And as you know, students, when they dissociate completely, they produce more concentration of hydroxyl ions. So, the base which dissociates completely and produce more number of hydroxyl ions on dissociation are called strong base. Example of strong base are many, in which I have given you two out here. One is NaOH and one is KOH. For your standard, 2 example is very much enough. So, remember the example of strong base as NaOH and KOH. Now, we go to the weak base. These are those base we say which dissociate partially. And as you know, students, when a compound dissociates partially, it produces less concentration of hydroxyl ion. And the example of weak bases are calcium hydroxide, copper hydroxide, aluminum hydroxide. There are many again. If you remember 3, it's enough for you all. So, from here you can make the difference between them also. Differentiate between strong base and weak base. Strong base dissociates completely, weak base dissociates partially. One difference. Strong base produce more concentration of hydroxyl ions, whereas weak base produce less concentration of hydroxyl ions. So, that becomes the definition. If you fragment, you get the difference between, and remember at least 2 examples of both. So, you can take the screenshot of this if you want for the reference. Now, we go to the third classification, according to concentration. According to concentration, bases are again of 2 types. One is called concentrated base, one is called dilute base. Okay, the pure form is known by the name concentrated base. Impure form containing water is called dilute base. Pure form is called concentrated base, students, but if you add water to it, that is called impure form and that is called dilute base. Example of concentrated base is conc NaOH, conc KOH, because concentrated can be abbreviated as conc. Example of dilute bases are DIL.NaOH and DIL.KOH, because dilute can be abbreviated as DIL. So, this is the example of concentrated base and dilute base, students. Okay. Do remember, concentrated means pure form and dilute means impure form containing water. Now, we will go to the 4th classification, and that is according to solubility. Okay, some bases are soluble in water, some bases are insoluble in water, students. Keep this in mind. So, bases according to solubility has been classified into 2 types, soluble and insoluble base. Bases which are soluble in water comes under soluble base, and such bases are even called by the name alkali. Whereas, there are some bases which are insoluble in water, due to which they are not referred as alkali. So, students, do remember, soluble base are also referred as alkali, but insoluble base are not referred as alkali. So, the bases which is soluble in water comes under soluble base, which are insoluble comes under insoluble base. And do remember, soluble bases are even called by the name alkali. Now, you can see some example of soluble bases. Sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, ammonium hydroxide is the example of soluble base. Whereas your copper hydroxide, lead hydroxide, ferrous hydroxide, ferric hydroxide are the examples of insoluble base. So, from here we can make one nice question, students. Look out here. All alkali come under base, but all bases are not referred as alkali. You can see here, soluble base can be called alkali, but insoluble base cannot be called alkali. So, from here we can make one reasoning question of this kind. all alkali comes under bases, but all bases are not called alkali. Now let us see this reasoning question. Okay, all alkalis are bases, but all bases are not alkali. Explain. I've given you the answer here, but before we go to the answer, let me explain you nicely. Now, as you know, bases are of two types. One is called soluble base, and one is called insoluble base. Bases are of two types. One is called soluble base, one is called insoluble base. And this soluble base can be called as alkali, as I said you. So see here how to give the answer. If this question comes, this is the way you are going to give the answer. Bases are of two types, soluble base and insoluble base. Soluble base can be referred as alkali. So therefore all alkali come under base. But there are some other bases like insoluble base which cannot be called alkali. Therefore all bases does not come under alkali. I repeat again, bases are of two types, soluble and insoluble base. Soluble base can be called alkali, therefore all alkali come under base. But there are other bases like insoluble base which cannot be called as alkali, therefore all base does not come under alkali. So I hope you understood this, so you can see the notes from here now. If you want, you can take the screenshot of it. Bases are of two types, that are soluble and insoluble base. Soluble base are called alkalis, but insoluble base cannot be called alkali. Hence, the given statement by the question is true, means all alkali come under base, but all base does not come under alkali. So students, so far we have finished the definition of base and the classification of base. Okay, if you want, you can take the screenshot of these two. Now we go to the preparation of base. Okay, base can be prepared from metals, from metallic oxide, which is also known by the name basic oxide, and from soluble base to insoluble base. If you remember, when I did the preparation of acid here, when here was acid, that time I wrote here from non-metal. From non-metallic oxide, that is acidic oxide, and from volatile acid to non-volatile acid, or from non-volatile acid to volatile acid. Similar to that, when you prepare base, we prepare from metal. Acid from non-metal, base from metal. Acid from non-metallic oxide, base from metallic oxide. Acid we prepare from non-volatile to volatile, or volatile to non-volatile. Here we prepare from soluble to insoluble. Now let us see this preparation one by one. Now first we will see the preparation of your base from metal. You can see sodium, potassium and calcium, all of them are metal, and I am reacting with oxygen. So when sodium and oxygen reacts, you get sodium oxide. When potassium and oxygen reacts, we get potassium oxide. When calcium and oxygen reacts, we get calcium oxide. Now I'll explain you this reaction in detail once. So look, you can see out here now. Sodium is a metal, potassium is a metal, calcium is also a metal. All of them are metal. And I'm reacting them with oxygen. Reacting them with oxygen. So when you react these, students, what you're supposed to get here is compound of sodium and oxygen. Compound of sodium and oxygen. So you're going to get the compound of sodium and oxygen. Oxygen valency is 2, so we have to put 2 here. Whereas sodium valency is 1, so we put 1 here. You have learned in lower classes how you crisscross the valencies. So the oxygen valency is 2 and sodium valency is 1. Now, 1 no need to write. So the formula becomes Na2O. This is called by the name sodium oxide. Now your job is to balance. So always balance from oxygen. And which oxygen you will choose to balance? The odd oxygen. So if you see here, here is 2 oxygen, but here is 1. So if I put here 2 oxygen, balance. 2 2 is a 4 sodium, 2 2 is a 4 sodium. So 4 sodium, the reaction is balanced. Now here, when these two reacts, we get a compound between potassium and oxygen again. And since the valency of oxygen is 2, so we write here 2, opposite. And potassium belongs to group 1 in the periodic table, so its valency is 1. And again 1 no need to write, so this becomes the formula of potassium oxide. Now to balance it, again you start with oxygen. 2 oxygen balance. 4 potassium balance. Now the last one, preparation of base. When calcium and oxygen reacts, you should get a compound of calcium and oxygen. Oxygen valency is 2, you know. And even the calcium valency is 2, and this 2 and 2 can be cancelled. As a result, the formula will become only CaO. Now to balance it, again you balance from oxygen, to oxygen, balance, to calcium, balance. And this is all known by the name basic oxides. You may be surprised, students. Earlier I said base are those compounds which on dissociation produce hydroxyl ions. But if you see here, there is no OH, but yet it is a base. But I am not saying base, I am saying it as basic oxide. Why these all are basic oxide now? Let us see. Now these basic oxides, when reacts with water, when this basic oxide reacts with water, all of them produces base like NaOH, KOH and CaOH whole twice. You can see in the reaction. Now this is your basic oxide. I am going to the second preparation now. Now these all are your basic oxide. You can see, students, this is called metallic oxide, also known by the name basic oxide. So when metallic oxide reacts with water, they produce base like sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, calcium hydroxide, and this compound, when they dissociates, they produce hydroxyl ions. Therefore, they are regarded as base. So metallic oxide, when reacts with water, they produce base. For that reason, metallic oxides are also known by the name basic oxide. Last time what I explained you was, non-metallic oxide, when reacts with water, they produce acid. For that reason, non-metallic oxide is called acidic oxide, I said. And today we are learning about base. So I am saying you metallic oxide, when reacts with water, they produce base. Therefore, metallic oxide is known as basic oxide, and this is the second preparation of base from basic oxide or metallic oxide. Then you can balance it. 2 sodium balance, rest elements are balanced, you can verify. 2 potassium balance, rest all are balanced, you can verify. In the last one, it is already balanced. So this is the preparation number 2 from basic oxide to base, or you can say from metallic oxide to base. If you want, you can take the screenshot of this. Now we go to the third preparation, from soluble base to insoluble base. So soluble bases are called alkali, students. And from soluble base we are going to prepare is insoluble base. This is going to help you in another chapter called analytical chemistry. In your syllabus there is another chapter called analytical chemistry. So these reactions you have to learn a lot in that particular chapter. So just trying to give you some hint for the upcoming chapters, okay? Now example of soluble base is NaOH and NH4OH. So if anyone asks you the example of soluble base, it is sodium hydroxide and ammonium hydroxide. And these soluble bases are called alkali. And from this soluble base, I am going to prepare insoluble base like magnesium hydroxide, like ferrous hydroxide, like ferric hydroxide. And since it is insoluble, so it is represented by downhead arrow. Downhead arrow means it will get precipitated. It will get precipitated means shown by the downhead arrow, and I am showing you the preparation of 3 insoluble bases like magnesium hydroxide, ferrous hydroxide, ferric hydroxide. Why ferrous? Because the valency of iron is 2. Why ferric? The valency of iron is 3. Otherwise you can call it by another name, iron 2 hydroxide, iron 3 hydroxide. So I want to prepare such insoluble base from this soluble base called alkali. And if you see here is magnesium. So here is no magnesium. So I came to know that I have to react with magnesium compound. Here is iron, but here is no iron. So I came to know I have to react with the iron compound. Here is your iron, but here is no iron. So I came to know that I have to react with the iron compound. So usually we react magnesium with chlorine, combined with chlorine to form magnesium chloride. Iron sometime with sulfate, sometime with chlorine. So this is called magnesium chloride. This is called ferrous sulfate. This is called ferric chloride, and this is going to react with our soluble bases like NaOH and what? NH4OH to get insoluble bases like this. Now let us see how to frame the reaction. These all three reactions you learn in analytical chemistry, I have already said you. These all are double decomposition reaction. So in double decomposition reaction, what happens is, first we'll go with the last, and these two will combine to form MgOH. Why 2? Because the valency of magnesium is 2. First we'll take the last, and these two will combine to form this. Why 2? Because the valency of iron here is 2. Similarly, this will combine with this to give you FeOH whole 3. Why 3? Because the valency of iron is 3. Now what is left over here? Na and Cl will give you NaCl. Don't get worried about these two, it will get balanced later on. And here we get is sodium sulfate. Sodium is left, sulfate is left, so we get sodium sulfate. But do remember, students, the valency of sulfate is 2, so we have to put here 2. And this is the exact formula of sodium sulfate. Now here what is left? Ammonium, and here is chlorine, so we get his ammonium chloride. And don't get worried about these 3, it will get balanced. So students, by reacting these salts with soluble bases like NaOH and NH4OH, we can get insoluble bases like this. And all these insoluble bases has different color. Like this compound color is dull white, PPT. PPT means precipitate. This is your dirty green in color, dirty green precipitate. And this is your reddish brown precipitate. The color of this precipitate is like this, reddish brown precipitate. And like this, there are many reactions. You need to learn the reaction as well as the color. Okay? Now let us see how to balance it. In chemistry, many students has a phobia about balancing. True. Okay? But to heal your problem, what you do in such cases, when there is a bracket, no, you balance in bulk. It becomes faster. I repeat again. No need to balance individual element. You go in bulk, it becomes easier. Let us see how. I'll start with the bracket one. 2OH, you can see here. 2OH, 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 balance. 2Na, 2Na, balance. 2Cl, 2Cl, balance. 1Mg, 1Mg, balanced. Now the second one. Again, I'll go with the bracket one. 2OH, 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 balance. 2Na, 2Na, balance. SFO, SFO, balance. Fe, Fe, balance, faster. Last one. Again, I'll go with OH. 3OH, 3OH, 3NH4. So 3NH4, 3Cl, 3Cl, 1Fe, 1Fe, get balance. So if there is a bracket reaction, students, try to balance in bulk. 90% becomes easy for you. I'm not saying 100%, but 90% will become easier to you when you balance in bulk, especially if there is a bracket formula in the reaction. So students, if you want, you can take the screenshot of this. Okay. So by this, I have completed the 3 preparation of base. One from metal, one from metallic oxide, and one is from soluble base to insoluble base. And this is required later on in analytical chemistry chapter, where you have to remember the reaction, because reactions are usually asked in board exam. Even the colors of different insoluble base. Okay, so we have finished the preparation of base. Now we move on to the properties of base. Okay. If you remember when I taught you the properties of acid, I said you that acid has sour taste, but do remember base has bitter taste. Acid has sour taste, whereas base has bitter taste. As I said you earlier, acid has basicity, ABA. Acid has basicity, but base has acidity, and acidity means number of OH minus ion. If you remember when I taught you acid, I have given you the word bar, and the meaning is, whenever acid is put in litmus paper, it turns blue litmus paper red. Acid turns blue litmus paper red. Acid turns blue litmus paper red. Then base turns opposite, red to blue. So if you remember bar, you come to know that acid turns blue litmus paper red. That means base will turn red to blue. That's why the number 3 property I have written is base turns red litmus paper blue. Acid is blue to red, whereas base is red to blue. So do remember base has bitter taste, they have acidity, they turn red litmus paper blue. Now we go to the number 4 point, property of base. Base reacts with acid to produce salt and water, and when acid and base reacts to produce salt and water, we usually call the reaction by the name neutralization reaction, which is very important reaction to you all students. So do remember, students, whenever acid reacts with base, we get salt and water. Such reaction is known as neutralization reaction. So you can see here one example. NaOH is a base, HCl is an acid. So this Na will go with Cl to form NaCl. Then this H and O forms H2O, that is water. So do remember, when acid and base reacts, we get salt and water. Such reaction is known as neutralization reaction. So students, these 4 properties very much enough from base. If you remember, I have taught you around 8 properties of acid, which is important for 4 chapters I said. And these are the 4 properties of base, which is enough for your standard to remember. Now we go to the uses of base. Okay? So far students, we have finished the definition of base, classification of base, preparation of base. Now we are going to the properties of base, now we are going to the uses of base. Okay. Bases like NaOH and KOH are used as laboratory reagent. These 2 are the famous base which we use in laboratory, students, even in various reaction of your ICSE board exam. If you see, we mostly give these 2 base. They mostly give these 2 base in the exam. So these 2 base are used as laboratory reagent. Even the same 2 base are used to manufacture soap in industry. So with the help of these 2 base, we prepare soap in industry. Calcium hydroxide is used in the laboratory preparation of basic gas called ammonia. So do remember, calcium hydroxide is used in the laboratory for the preparation of basic gas called ammonia, whose formula is NH3. And this has been asked in objective question also, student. Name a base which is used to prepare ammonia in laboratory. If this question comes, the answer is calcium hydroxide. Even you can call it by the name slaked lime. And other uses of bases are in the book. So you can go through it. There's nothing to understand out here. You just have to mug it up. Some of the uses of base. I have given you 3 out here. There are many other uses of base given in the book. You can go through it. So students, so far I have completed base with you today in my today's class. Last time I completed acid. So today I have completed base with you. So in my next class, I'm going to discuss a new topic with you. And that is called by the name indicator, okay? Then after doing indicator portion, okay, then in another class we'll discuss about salt. So this chapter is named as acid, bases and salt, in which I have completed by today acid and base. Okay students, thank you very much. Be safe, stay home, see you next time.